First, we build the people, and then we allow the people to build the business. This is something that I would hear from my pops over and over again. It was like one of his favorite sayings in the world. He would say this to me over and over. And I like a lot of things that I tell you about my pops. I would resist him. I would be like, yeah, yeah, whatever, pop. But a lot of times we just need a perspective shift. Sometimes we need to be inspired, and all the time we need to fill up our soul. But when we have all three of those things, it's kind of like the Holy Grail. You see, yesterday I was took my daughter to school yesterday, or got to take her to school. She's in high school. She's got her own car, but her car is being fixed, and I got a chance to be able to do that. It's one of my favorite things in the world to do because I get a chance to talk with my daughter. Well, we got there just a little bit early. She's like, "I'm not going in because if I go in, Dad, that would be sus." And I was like, first of all, I don't understand what you're talking about," but she didn't want to show up early, and because that would obviously be sus. And so we sat and we got a chance to be able to talk in the car, and we were sitting there chatting it up. And I just turned the truck off, and and then she goes to leave, and she's like, I'm leaving your presence, or something that she says, and she gets out, and I let her walk for a little bit. I go to push the ignition, and I'm like, oh man. First of all, I don't wanna be, embarrassing my daughter because her dad is, like, out here working on the car in the parking lot of her high school. But, I wait for her to walk away, and then I'm like, "Oh, cool," 'cause, for s because I had to take her car to get, some service on it. I had a jumper, mechanism in the back of my truck. I had taken it out of her car, I put it in my car, and so I was like, "No big deal, I'll just jump the car real quick," and then that was out of battery. So I couldn't even start my truck, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, "Oh man, I got the hood up, the kids are walking by and stuff, and nobody's thinking about anything." But it took me back to the days when I would be embarrassed. Like if our car broke down, my dad, we would drive a 67 Ranchero to school, and my parents weren't embarrassed about it because it was a car. But, I was going back and I was having all these flashes, and I was like, I called my wife and I was like, "Oh, I'm just going to get an Uber and then just go get a new battery, put it in, no big deal." And then I look to my left, and there's a kid. His name is Kai DiMaggio. And Kai DiMaggio is a punk rock kid that's in theater with my daughter, and he's a really cool kid. And I look over and I was like, so I go over, tap on the window, and Kai is like, "Hey, Mr. Cardenas." I said, "Is there any way that you have jumper cables?" He's like, Absolutely, man, no problem at all." He gets out in all of his punk rock lore, and he gets his jumper cables. He jumps my truck, and then bam, I'm off to like AutoZone to get a new battery for my truck. And as I'm driving there, I'm just thinking about like, what can I do for Kai because he's so cool. He helped me out. This just kind of changed my perspective because here was this embarrassing moment, or what I thought, and how am I starting my day off? My car, is not, or my truck is not working, whatever it is. And then I'm driving and I'm just thinking about Kai, like this random act of kindness from this punk rock kid, just amazing, right? So I'm thinking on the way there, and then I get to AutoZone, and I don't have any expectation of elite service at AutoZone at all. But I walk in and Sandra meets me. She's like, "Hey, how are you doing today?" And she makes eye contact with me. She's making sure I got everything. I said, "I just called and I was talking about a battery that you had." And she's like, "Oh, yeah, I have it up here on the screen. I want to show you the couple different options. But first, let's just make sure that it's your battery and it's not anything else." And I was like, "Wow, this is so amazing." She was treating me like I was at the Four Seasons. And, we're at AutoZone in Oceanside, and Sandra goes through, she makes sure, and then she calls out, she's like, "Terry, can I get some help?" Well, Terry brings out his little cart, and he wheels it out to my truck, and, he's like, "Let me test the battery before we do anything, because we don't want you to buy a battery and not need a battery." And Terry starts telling me about 40 years that he's had in the industry, for, in the automotive industry. And, he starts telling me about, restoring a car with his sons and all these things. And he's just thanking me for my business. And it took me back to when I used to pass wrenches to my pop. And it just touched my heart. Here's Sandra treating me like the king of the earth. Kai made sure that my car was jumped to be able to get there, and now I got Terry, and he's serving me at the highest level. I'm like, what? Am I in a parallel universe? But it was amazing because the way that I felt when I walked out, I felt like I was on top of the world, although my circumstances were probably not the most desirable. Well, earlier that week, I've been making fast friends with a guy named John Elston. And John Elston, just, I got to talk to him on my drive up to see some of my buddies. And he helped me with a perspective shift. And that perspective shift was incredible because he just started talking to me about different opportunities, things like that. And he started speaking life and just really encouraging me. And it was amazing because it just took a few words from a person who I really respected and who was doing what he said he was going to do, which caused me to trust him. Took a few words from him to shift my whole perspective. So here I got Kai and Sandra and Terry inspiring me. I've got John Elston, who has given me a different perspective because he's not talking about theory. He's not talking just empty words, but he's adding words to his actions and they're in line. And it was just unbelievable. And then finally, yesterday, my buddy called me from Lompoc, California. That's where we grew up. And we went to Los Padres Elementary School together. And we've been friends since we were in fourth grade, over 40 years. And his name is Johnny Reagan. He calls me. He's like, hey, he called me the other day. He's like, hey, I'm in town and, I'd love to be able to see you. And it was going to be tough because he was down in San Diego. I'm in Carlsbad. It's 45 minutes away. And, we didn't know if it was going to work. But he called me yesterday and he's like, hey, I'm in Yuma. And, I got a rental car so I can actually just come to you. And I was like, man, that would mean so much to me because I got kids. I got, all these things. And so he makes the drive up. We hang out in the backyard for a little bit, and mainly we stayed there for a bit because my daughter's boyfriend was over, and they can't be alone in the house by themselves. But we get a chance to be able to do this, and we're sitting in the backyard chatting it up, and then her boyfriend leaves, and I want to bring him over to the studio here where the magic happens. And we come in, and he starts asking me questions about the podcast and how did I learn it and who taught me and all these things. And I was like, I taught myself. No one would teach me, so I just figured this stuff out myself. And he's like, wow. And he seemed interested. And so I started connecting a couple of different aspects of the cameras and everything like that. And I just told him to sit down. And we sat down and we had a 2-hour podcast yesterday. I got to sit down with my friend of 40 years and have a podcast in my studio. It was unreal. And when we got done, we got to go get some tacos with my son. But the main thing is my soul was filled up. My soul was filled up not because of anything that he did, but just because he showed up. And then I got to share that. So if you didn't get a chance to listen to the episode, you can listen to it. It's episode 632. It's Johnny Reagan. This guy is incredible. And what it brought me back to was that saying that my pops said. First you build the people, then allow the people to build the business. Well, see, yesterday and throughout this last week I didn't realize it, but I was the one that needed to be built up. I was built up by John Elston. I was built up by Kai and Sandra and Terry. I was built up by Johnny. John helped me with my perspective. I was inspired by Kai and Terry and and Sandra, and then my soul was filled up by Johnny. And so as I went through, it's amazing because I sat down with Proverbs 21 today. And I sat in the backyard and I was like, Lord, you better be able to deliver on this bad boy. Because we go through Inchstones and read the corresponding proverb for the corresponding day. How could 3,000-year-old wisdom apply to that? And I was like, this is such a specific story that you gave me and that I'm living and walking in and inspired by. God, you better deliver on this one. And guess what? In Proverbs 21, he did. In Proverbs 21, it reminds us that God is in control and that he will bring the blessing through people into our lives. I was blessed by John Elston, Johnny Reagan, Kai DiMaggio, Sandra, and Terry. So my question to you is, what circumstance have you had in the last week or 2 weeks or month that has turned into an opportunity simply because a person? And what I would invite you to do is to not only write their name down, but call them, text them, and let them know how much you inspire them or they inspire you. So why don't we get this party started?
they're working. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
I always question God. Well, when I say I always, I do question him, and my pops would tell me about this a lot, where he was like, "It's okay to question God. It's okay to uh, argue with him, or or even yell at him at times." And there was a time in my life where I was scared of doing that, but my pops came out of the garage one time, and he seemed kind of heated, and I was like, "What's up, Pop?" He was like, "I was just yelling at God." I was like, "You better watch out, man." And he said, "No, God wants you to yell at him. He wants you to communicate with him." And when we communicate with God, it means that we're talking and we're listening, and then we're applying those things afterwards. That's what true communication is. And he just encouraged me always to have those conversations. And, I was questioning this morning because, you know, I was so inspired by the things that have happened throughout this last week. I mean, John Elston in my life going to AutoZone, like literally, like, my truck battery dying, and thinking this is a horrible start to my day. Although I got blessed by Kai DiMaggio, I got blessed by by Sandra, I got blessed by Terry, and then I started to look at it and I was like, wow, elite service. And guess what? Guess what I'm speaking about in Tennessee? I'm flying out tonight. I'm going to be speaking on that. I'm going to be speaking at Secret Knock on Tuesday, and then on the weekend, I'm going to be speaking to the number one hospitality convention, and I'm going to be speaking about AutoZone. That's the crazy thing. We're not going to be talking about the Four Seasons for Elite Service. It's AutoZone. It's the places that like we can have an impact on people no matter where it is that we are, and we can be impacted by people in the places that we don't expect. We expect it in the Four Seasons, the Ritz Carlton, things like that. I didn't expect it walking into Oceanside AutoZone. And I tell you, if you get the chance to go meet Sandra and meet Terry, these two need to be celebrated at the highest level. I left them a Google review, and I'm going to put the link to their store. If you could review them too, I just think it would be awesome. I'm going to try and send this to the general manager so they know, because I just think that they need to have some life breathed into them. So and when I was saying that, I was questioning God, because I was like, how can you take like a John Elston who breathed life into me, help me with my perspective? I got inspired by elite service from AutoZone in Oceanside, and then have my soul filled up by my buddy, Johnny Reagan. How can this happen? Well, what was cool is God always delivers. And Proverbs 21, it reminds us that God is in control and that he will bring the blessings through people into our lives. And sometimes we deny the people, because when we're having circumstances that aren't the greatest, we have the tendency to hole up, or uh, we have the tendency to want to be alone. But God is saying, like, you need community. And we all learned this during the pandemic. I mean, people had lost their minds at times. I lost, I went through those things, but we lose our mind most of the time when we're not around people. We need people to be around us, and they're going to bring the blessing. And it's not always just about, I always just think like build people and then, allow them to build a business. And I was like, oh, I should go around just building everybody, which is true. Build them with your words, with your actions, with all those things. But also, sometimes you're the one that needs to be built. Sometimes you need a little life breathed into you. And I had that happen with John Elston. I had that happen with Johnny Reagan. I had that happen with Kai DiMaggio and Terry and Sandra. So I want to say thank you so much. So let's dive into Proverbs 21. So in verse 1 and 22, give God room to bless you. And this was a thing that my mom talked about all the time was, you know, give him room, give God room to be able to bless you. Because a lot of times we're so scheduled, or we have such a regimen that we don't allow that to happen. We don't allow the blessings to happen. And this was a cool thing that I got from David Hamilton today. I don't even know if he's okay with me sharing this. Um, but I want to share a quick one from him. Let's see if I can find it. Okay, cool. So I asked him the other day, how does he stop procrastinating? And he said, I could list 3 ways, but I don't apply them often. Schedule specific days to evaluate your priorities, prayer over them, maintain practical routine and schedule that covers your priorities. Remembering most success is rooted in discipline. Write down and go back and reflect on the joys you've experienced doing so. Now, that all said, what I really do is ask myself, why am I avoiding this? There is usually a deeper meaning behind it, going on the inside, and I try to get to the root of that. If I could figure that out and still believe it's in my best interest to do it, uh, best interest to do it. I remind myself that blessings are often in the work we are avoiding, and so, um, you know, as we go through, like, what I read from David today when I asked him, like, "How do you stop procrastinating?" He was, basically, he was saying, like, "Give God room." Like, you can have all the systems, the plans, all those things, but also leave God room, the ability and the room to be able to bless you because he's gonna bring blessing, and most of the time, he's gonna bring it through people. And, so in verse 2, 4, 10, 12, 15, 18, 21, and 27, the condition of your heart will light the way or sometimes lead you down a dark path. Th- th- I it was tough while I was writing this morning as God was downloading it to me because I didn't want to write the second side, the comma, or sometimes it'll lead you down a dark path. I was like, let's just keep it on the positive, God. But what he was saying is the condition of your heart. So the condition of your heart will light the path, but it also can lead you down a dark path. We just have to check the condition of our heart. And that hit on a bunch of different verses today. And then in verse 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, 11, 16, and 19, which is pretty important, allow God to work. Allow God the ability to be able to work. He's good at it. And when we allow him the ability to be able to work in our life, we'll see that he's good at it. And then when we see he's good at it, then we'll allow him to do more. Allow him to do that, and he'll bring people and things into your life that honestly will switch the negative circumstances into a a positive, inspirational story that'll help shift your perspective. Sometimes it'll help to inspire you. Sometimes it'll just fill up your soul, and in a lot of cases, it'll do all three. And when it does all three, you just be walking. You'll be walking on that high level, which is incredible. Um, in verse 6, 14, 23, and 28, when your heart is full, it flows out of your mouth. So guard your heart. Let me read it again. When your heart is full, it flows out of your mouth. So your words are an overflow of your heart. So just guard what goes into your heart. How does it get into your heart? Through your eyes, through your ears, and through your senses. Right? So watch what you're watching, watch what you're listening to, and watch what you're experiencing because it ultimately goes into your heart. Once your heart gets filled, guess what happens? It comes out your mouth. And then your words become your actions and your actions become your reality. So just be conscious of it. Guard your heart, as my mama would always say. In verse 13 and 24, we are blessed to be a blessing. Make sure that you understand this over and over again. It's hard because a lot of times, like, I'm in the blessing mode. Like, I just want to be blessed. Hey, Lord, this is what I need. And what my friend Stephanie Kachelski, one of my greatest mentors, she always says to me, "You're blessed to be a blessing." And she would give not out of her excess, she would give from what she had. And sometimes it would be a note, sometimes it would be some chicken noodle soup that I would go to her house and she would just make sure. Sometimes it would be a word, a text, whatever it was. But she was always letting me know that you are blessed to be a blessing. Who can you bless today with your presence? Well, you don't have to buy them nothing. You just can be there for them. Now, I want to figure out and find out what I could do for Kai DiMaggio because I love that kid. I mean, he just was amazing yesterday, and I just hugely thankful for that. So in verse 17, 20, 25, 26, and 29, thought of the future will slow you down and clear your vision. Peace and joy will follow. The thought of the future. The thought of the future is prudence, and the prudence will come from wisdom. Wisdom will come from God. So if you spend time with God, right? You spend time with Him, He'll bring wisdom, then He'll bring prudence, which is the thought of the future. And that will slow you down, clear your vision, and then peace and joy will follow. It's a promise. It's it, when I read that, I was like, man, it can't be that simple. And God is just over and over again. Yes, it is that simple. In verse 30, God gives us an unfair advantage through people He brings into our lives. See, a lot of times we resist people, and I do this a lot. I resist people. I'm like, oh, I'm going through this. I just need to be alone. And God is saying, no, I need you to be around people. I'm going to bring people into your life. Look at through the stories, all through through scriptures. He brings people into people's lives. Sometimes you bring the blessing. Sometimes you're the one getting blessed. And so I just want to encourage you. There's someone out there that needs your blessing, and you need somebody's blessing today. And it could be a text, it could be a call, whatever it is, but they need to know. I got to reach out to my buddy Johnny Reagan's mom, Heike, and she is incredible. If you're listening, I'm going to send you this episode because I want you to know how much you mean to me, Heike. Um, and I just called her mama. I said her first name, but I wouldn't call her by her first name. I just called her mama all the time. She was like a second or third mom to me. And I used to raid her pantry of snacks, and she used to take care of us all. And even though we were knuckleheads, she was always laughing and smiling. And then we would say something, and she would cry tears of joy all the time. And Mama, you're probably doing that right now. But I want you to know how much you mean to all of us and what you did in raising your son. And you did such a great job. And I want to honor you in that. Mama Reagan, you are amazing. We love you. We love you. We love you. We love you. God gives you an unfair advantage through the people He brings into your life. And then verse 30. And in verse 31, as we wrap up, is one plants, another waters, and only God brings the increase, and He brings that through people. Are you that person? Are you that person that is breathing life? Are you the John Elston in somebody else's life that literally like is breathing so much life into every single part of my life right now? Are you the Kai DiMaggio, the Sandra, the Terry that's bringing inspiration? Are you the Johnny who's just filling up somebody else's soul? If you're not, become that. Do that today. I wrote this out, and when circumstances become our focus, the focus, things will appear to be bleak. Although when we focus on giving God room, He will bring blessings through people that will blow our mind. As my mama would say, He's seldom early, never late, and always right on time. Whether you need a perspective shift, inspiration, or your soul to be filled up, it will be the people in your life directed by God that will deliver. So, my question to all of you is, when's the last time that a challenge turned into a blessing because a person showed up? And then I want you to answer this: what's their name? Figure out their phone number, find their email, or give them a call or a text or whatever it is, or go over and say, talk to them in person and let them know how much they inspired you and how much life you breathe or they breathed into your life. Mr. John Elston, I want you to know that you're awesome. Mr. Johnny Reagan, you're awesome. Kai DiMaggio, dude, I've just been thinking about punk rock just because of you, and I don't listen to any punk rock. Sandra, Terry, you are the standard, and you will be talked about and become legends in the hospitality industry in this next week. I will make sure of it. It doesn't matter that if you're at the Four Seasons or the Ritz-Carlton or the AutoZone in Oceanside, you can make an impact on people and make people feel different. And that's what we're all called to do. It's been another episode of Inchstones. I appreciate you. If you haven't checked out the Substack, if you want to read it, that's our Substack. Go ahead and subscribe to that. And also share it with a friend. Share it with somebody who you think would, would inspire them. Share this episode with them. If you want to listen or watch, you're doing it right now. You're on YouTube, you're on Spotify, you're on Apple. Subscribe to them all. Leave a review. It would mean the world. If you want to experience it, the Vibe Experience, April 12th, I said it yesterday. Honestly, the Vibe Experience should be illegal. It should be illegal because the amount of the quality of the people that are going to be in the room, not just on stage and the people presenting, but the people in the room. And it generally only takes one person to shift a lot of your perspective and reality. There's going to be perspective shift. There's going to be inspiration. Your soul is going to be filled. April 12th, it is going to be unreal. John Elston, James Dixon, Baron Baptiste, Keith Hale, Peter Anthony, yours truly, Claudia Ryan, Linda Schwartz. I tell you, the list goes on and on and on. It is going to be unreal. That's the vibe experience. And then if you want to engage with it, I get a chance to be able to do that for Amaze Insights and one of the largest hospitality groups that conventions, and it's here at the Fairmont. I get to speak at that, do the keynote. I'm going to be in Nashville. Actually, later on tonight, I'll land in the morning and then speak right outside of Nashville in Laredo, Tennessee. And just excited to be able to be there. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you. James Barbour, we went 6 minutes over the 20, but make sure that you keep walking to and listening to Inchstones. We're trying to help you out in your life and fill your soul. So hopefully you have a phenomenal day. My name is Kelly Cardenas, and I'm officially off the hot seat. Peace, love, and soul.
Nothing more on my mind. I got two shines, so every day I climb. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again.